There is a line we're all curious about, a boundary between the world we know and the things that linger just out of sight. Most of us are content to wonder, to speculate, to leave that line untouched. But some feel the need to cross it, to seek out the dark with a flashlight and a recording device, convinced that curiosity is their shield, their protection. They are almost always wrong. Welcome to Night Encounters. In this video, you will hear 3 terrifying, allegedly true stories from those who decided to investigate the unknown. They went looking for proof, but instead, they found something far more primal, far more chilling, the truth. Sometimes, the darkness looks back. Story 1 by the Archivist. This first story comes from a user we're calling the Archivist. It was the fall of 2018. My friend Leo and I were deep into urban exploration. We'd hit all the local spots: the abandoned asylum on Mill Road, the old Sutton textile mill. But there was one place that had become a sort of urban legend in our circle: Gable House. It stood on the edge of town, a massive Victorian-era home that had been empty for decades. People whispered about it, about the tragic family history, the rumors of a hanging, the eerie presence that people swore they could feel even from across the street. We were skeptics, though. We didn't believe in ghosts, at least not in the way people described them. We loved the history, the decaying beauty of these old structures. We thought we were documenting something forgotten, preserving it before it was lost to time. That night, we were armed with our usual kit: 2 high-powered flashlights, a DSLR camera, and a brand new digital voice recorder. The plan was simple: get in, get some photos and EVP sessions, get out. But the moment we stepped onto the property, something changed. The air felt different, the kind of difference you can't put into words. It wasn't just colder, it was oppressive. It wasn't peaceful quiet either. It was thick, heavy, as though the house itself was waiting. My stomach tightened, and though I tried to brush it off, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. But this was what we came for, right? The thrill of the unknown. We squeezed through a broken window at the back of the house and found ourselves in a time capsule. Dust-covered furniture, peeling wallpaper, and a heavy, musty smell clung to the air. The house felt like it hadn't been touched in years, untouched, forgotten, and silent. We started in the main hall, and I set up the first EVP session. My hands trembled slightly as I held up the recorder, its little red light glowing faintly in the darkness. "Is there anyone here with us? Can you tell us your name?" I asked, my voice low, reverberating through the empty space. Silence. Nothing but the creaks of the old house. We moved into the kitchen, asking the same questions, our voices bouncing off the cold walls. But again, nothing. A few quiet moments, the sound of the rain outside, and then silence. I was beginning to feel disappointed. Maybe this house wasn't as haunted as people said. Maybe it was just an empty building, waiting to collapse. Then we found the staircase to the 2nd floor. With every step up the staircase, a weight seemed to press down on my chest, a tangible pressure that made it harder to breathe. The 2nd floor was darker, colder. It felt different than the first. The air was thick, as though something invisible was pushing against us. The hallway stretched on, the doors to the rooms all closed except for one at the very end. It was slightly ajar, just enough to see that the inside was pitch black. Leo glanced at me. I could see the hesitation in his eyes. This was exactly how every horror movie starts, right? The haunted house, the creepy door, the bad decisions. But we'd come this far. We couldn't leave now. I swallowed, nerves crawling up my spine, and we moved down the hall, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the walls. I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was a child's bedroom. A rusted bed frame sat in one corner, and a filthy stuffed animal lay discarded on the floor. But it wasn't the furniture that drew our attention. It was the walls. Someone had drawn things on the walls. Stick figure shapes, crude and jagged, drawn in what looked like charcoal. They were gathered around something on the floor, but we couldn't tell what it was. A feeling of dread washed over me, heavy and suffocating. This wasn't just a bedroom. It was a place where something had happened. I held up the recorder again. We're in the bedroom now. Is this your room? Did you draw on the walls? We both froze. There, in the corner of the room, under the faint beam of our flashlights, we heard it. A voice. Not a moan, not a whisper. It was a dry, raspy, intelligent whisper, clear as day. Turn it off. The blood drained from my face. I didn't even think. My hands shook as I fumbled with the recorder, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. But Leo's face had already gone pale. His eyes were wide with terror. He reached for his flashlight, but in his panic, it clattered to the floor, sending the room into near darkness. Then came the sound. A creak. Slow, deliberate. It was coming from the hallway. It wasn't on the recorder. It was real. The sound of footsteps, slowly, deliberately, getting closer to the door. Leo was whispering something, but I couldn't focus on the words. All I could think about was the fact that whatever was out there, it wasn't playing by the rules. It was here with us. Without thinking, I slammed my shoulder into the door, forcing it shut. Something heavy thumped against it from the hallway. Leo was shouting. I was fumbling for the window behind us, but it was stuck. Old, thick paint had sealed it shut. Thump. Again. The door shook in its frame. I don't know how long it took, but finally, I got the window open. The glass cracked as I pulled it, but we didn't care. We didn't care about the height, about the fall. We just needed to get out. I tumbled out of the window, landing hard on the overgrown grass. Leo followed quickly, and we ran. We didn't look back. We didn't stop until we were in the car, the tires spinning on the gravel as we sped away. We never went back, never even developed the photos. I deleted the audio file that night. I couldn't bear to have it. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear that whisper, clear as day. It wasn't a ghost, not some lingering echo of a past tragedy. It was a presence. It was aware of us, and it didn't want to be recorded. Story 2, by River. Our second story comes from a user named River. I've always been a solo hiker. There's a peace in the mountains that you can't find anywhere else. The isolation, the quiet, the rhythm of your own footsteps in the dirt. Last spring, I decided to do a 3-day solo trek on the Black Ridge Trail. It's a remote trail, but well marked. I'd done my research, told the park rangers my route. I was prepared, or at least I thought I was. The first day went perfectly. The weather was clear, the sun high, the breeze light. I made camp by a stream, cooked my dinner, and felt that deep, satisfying tiredness that only comes from a day spent outdoors, away from the distractions of the world. As the sky darkened, I settled into my one-person tent, reading by the light of my headlamp, enjoying the stillness of the evening. And then I heard it. A whistle. It was distant at first, a fleeting sound, almost like a bird call. I thought nothing of it. Nature had its rhythms, and sometimes things that sound strange turn out to be nothing more than a common bird or wind moving through the trees. I went back to my book, brushing it off. About 20 minutes later, I heard it again, closer this time. The same two notes. Now, it didn't sound like a bird. The tone was too precise, too controlled. Something about it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I turned off my headlamp, letting the tent fall into darkness, and listened closely. The forest was alive with the sounds of night, the rustle of leaves, the occasional hoot of an owl, the distant croak of frogs. But beneath it all, I could hear something else. A soft, almost imperceptible crunching sound. Footsteps. Not on the path, but in the brush. My heart started to race. I gripped the handle of my hiking knife, the cold metal familiar against my palm. It was probably just a deer or a raccoon. I told myself not to be paranoid. But that voice inside me kept whispering, "What if it's not?" The circling stopped. Silence. For what felt like an eternity, there was nothing. I breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe it was just an animal, spooked by my presence. Then, the whistle came again, and this time, it was right outside my tent. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't an animal. This was a person. Someone was out there, standing just beyond the thin nylon walls of my tent. The breath caught in my throat as I strained to hear more, to understand what was happening. I lay perfectly still, the darkness around me heavy with dread. The only sound was my own heartbeat, thudding like a drum in my ears. And then I heard him, a low, casual hum, tuneless, almost playful, like someone idly waiting for a bus. I could see his silhouette against the moonlit trees, a tall, dark figure standing motionless just outside the fabric of my tent. He knows I'm in here. He knows I'm alone. What does he want? Why isn't he speaking? The humming stopped. Then, the sound that haunts me to this day. The slow, deliberate zip of my tent's door. He was coming in. My survival instincts kicked in, and I didn't think, I just acted. I screamed. A raw, guttural sound ripped from my throat, and I launched myself forward, not through the door, but through the side of the tent. The nylon ripped, and I tumbled out onto the cold ground. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just ran. I ran blindly, the cold air biting at my skin, branches slapping my face, thorns tearing at my clothes. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps crashing through the undergrowth, chasing me, fast, too fast. I changed direction, splashed through the icy stream I'd camped by, scrambling up a steep, rocky embankment on the other side. I found a dense thicket of thorns and crawled into the center of it, curling into a ball, trying to silence my ragged breaths. I heard him stop at the edge of the stream. I heard his frustrated grunt as he stood there, listening for me. I waited, holding my breath, my body shaking from the cold and fear. Then, a final, long whistle. This one was angry, final, and sharp. The sound echoed through the forest before the footsteps finally receded, the sound of his pursuit fading away into the distance. I didn't move for what felt like hours. When the sun finally rose, I was frozen in place, my body trembling uncontrollably. I hiked out to the nearest road and hitched a ride with the first car I saw, not caring about the danger of hitching. I just needed to get away. I reported the incident to the park rangers. They found my campsite torn apart. My tent had been slashed to ribbons, but they never found the man. They claimed it was probably just a drifter, a loner, maybe a weirdo who had been passing through. But I know what I heard. That wasn't random. He wasn't just wandering, he was hunting. And the whistle? That was him playing with his food. I haven't gone hiking alone since. I don't think I ever will again. Story 3 by Echo. Our final story comes from a user named Echo. It serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying investigations aren't of places, but of people. Back in nursing school, I did a rotation at a long-term care facility. It was an old, sprawling building, parts of it dating back to the early 1900s. The halls creaked with age, and the dim lighting gave everything an eerie, almost ghostly quality. I was assigned to care for Mr. Albright, a man in his 90s with dementia. He was mostly nonverbal, but his eyes were kind, and he always had a gentle smile, even on the toughest days. Every evening I would do my rounds and always end with him, sitting with him for a few minutes before my shift ended. There were stories about his room 317, but they were nothing more than nurses' lounge gossip. Things like it was always colder than the other rooms, or how the call light would blink on and off even when it was unplugged. I dismissed it all. Stress, old wiring, coincidence. But one night, everything changed. It was around 2 a.m., and the rain was coming down in sheets. The hallways were quiet, just the hum of the floor polisher in the distance and the occasional beep from a nearby room. I went into Mr. Albright's room to check his vitals. He was asleep, breathing slow and steady. As I turned to leave, I heard it. A whisper. It came from the corner of the room, near the old, heavy wardrobe that looked like it belonged in another century. My blood ran cold. It wasn't Mr. Albright. He was fast asleep. The room felt thick, charged, like the air itself was alive. I told myself it was nothing. It was just the wind, the rain, exhaustion. I forced myself to stand still and listen. Silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I had to know. I went back to the supply closet and grabbed an old dictaphone one of the doctors had left behind. It was impulsive, and I knew it was unethical, but the thought was screaming in my head. What if you can prove it? I returned to room 317. Mr. Albright was still asleep. I set the recorder on the windowsill, hid him behind the curtain, and hit record. I left the room, my heart pounding in my chest. The rest of my shift was agonizing. Every time I passed the room, my heart would race. Finally, just before my shift ended, I slipped back in, retrieved the recorder, and shoved it into my scrubs pocket. I didn't listen to it until I got to my car, sitting in the gray morning light, rain still drizzling. I pressed play, my fingers trembling. The first hour was just rain and Mr. Albright's soft breathing. I fast-forwarded, bored, about to turn it off. And that's when I heard it. A new voice. It wasn't a whisper. It was low, guttural, raspy. It didn't sound human. I froze. And then I heard Mr. Albright's voice, weak and terrified. The clarity in his words chilled me to my core. He is mine. Then the raspy voice again, closer this time, as though it had moved right up to the recorder. He is mine. I threw the recorder onto the passenger seat like it was on fire. My hands were shaking violently as I drove straight to the head nurse and showed her the recording. She listened in silence, her face pale and grim. "We need to move him," she said softly. "Today." They transferred Mr. Albright to another room that afternoon. The change was immediate. He became more alert, more aware. He looked at me, his eyes clearer than they had been in weeks, and whispered, "Thank you." He passed away peacefully 2 nights later. I don't know what was in room 317. A spirit? A demon? some kind of dark imprint from a past trauma. I used to need to know, but now I just don't want to think about it. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed. Some things don't want to be found. They already have what they believe is theirs. 3 investigations, 3 lines crossed. One sought evidence in a forgotten house, another sought solitude in the wild, and the last sought answers in a silent room. All of them found the same thing: fear, not theoretical, but visceral and immediate. It begs the question, is the unknown something we are meant to understand? Or is it a boundary meant to be respected for our own safety? The truth, as they discovered, is often not a comfort. It is a warning. If you have a true original story you'd like to submit to be featured on a future video, please email us at nightencountersstories@gmail.com. We treat all submissions with confidentiality and respect.